That's everybody. We are back, and this is another exciting, intriguing, technical, sexy episode. Maybe I don't know. I want some adjectives. I want some adjectives this year. It's 2026. Yeah, like I mean, this is being recorded in 2025, but I have to get amped for 2026, which feels weird because it's not even Christmas yet, so it's a little bit strange. But anyway, we have another great episode lined up for you today. We're going to be talking a little bit more about my coding journey in relation to a previous episode. It would likely be 1 or 2 episodes back, but it might be 3-ish, depending on if there's a holiday episode. But a few weeks ago, I was talking about asking the question, can AI teach me React? And I haven't done any more with the AI because, Mike, you recommended that I work on some stuff actually sort of like by hand, if you will, manually code it, like have the AI take me to a point and then I manually code it. And then I actually have some comments on that now. So kind of followed up. And so if you're like, I don't want to hear any more about AI, this is not about the AI. This is like the second part, the manual part. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating in your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And if you want to learn how to code, you can go and do so on Scrimba. You can use our link, scrimba.com/link/HTML all the things to get up to 20% off with full details in the show notes on HTMLallthethings.com. And just a reminder that we are powered by Code Rabbit. They give you the power of AI code reviews to help cut your code review time in half. Check out the link in the show notes and episode description to net yourself a 14-day free trial with no credit card needed and just a 2-click sign up with a GitHub or GitLab account. So, okay, let's kind of touch on this. So what I did intentionally for this episode is, as I went and did some manual coding this week, I did not take any sort of like formal show note. I intentionally did some bullet points here and there because I wanted this to sort of be a casual conversation about this, because I was going to frame it as something where I've fallen into tutorial hell. And I'll like tell you the story. So basically, listen to that first part if you can. I'll link it in the show notes. But basically, brief synopsis, I got AI to sort of teach me React, not Next.js, none of the back end, just the front end stuff. I got it to teach me to a certain point, and then I realized that I was reading and able to read the code that it was providing, but I was unable, at least I thought, to write the code. It felt very sort of like, hey, I don't think I'll be able to write this. Like 99% sure I'm not going to be able to write this. So Mike recommended, okay, get AI to take you to a certain point, and then you go in and you start coding yourself. So you code that same thing again. You don't have to have a GitHub repo. You don't have to have all the sort of framework around it, but this is just for practice. It's like kind of like taking notes in class. And so I went to go do that. And as I was doing that, I was about to start coding some stuff up, and I was about to go into Vite, about to get like that templated sort of project, basically the create React app replacement, whatever the Vite one is. And I was about to sort of get that started. And I noticed that a lot of the stuff that I was looking at, so I was like looking at the code that the AI had generated me for my tutorials. I could read it, but I didn't really understand what it was doing. And I realized that it was coding it in a way that was different than how I would code it. And so I thought, you know what, maybe a major part of this problem is not that, React is difficult and whatnot. Maybe it's that I'm a little rusty with JavaScript, which I likely am. So I was like, okay, let me go in and grab a couple of these lines that I don't understand and see if they're React or if they're JavaScript. Go in there, I check, they're not React, they're JavaScript. So I'm like, okay, already this is a little alarming. So let me like see what the heck, see how often this shows up. So I went online and I looked up just some random React examples. And I found that some of these lines were showing up pretty frequently in React code and in different frameworks and commonly kind of showing up. And so I went and I said, all right, I went to Gemini and I said, give this, like, what is this? And tell me what it is. And what it is it was array destruct. And you're going to say, Matt, that's been around for a long time, whatever. This is where I started having a conversation with Mike, is I think my JavaScript knowledge is still valid, but it's trapped in like 2012. Because whenever I have an array and I need to access something from the array, set values to the array, scan through the array, I'm not, destructuring. I'm not doing these sort of more ES6 things. I'm doing a lot of stuff from ES5 or whatever it was called back then. I'm kind of like stuck in the past there. And that JavaScript is still valid. But that's a major issue for me because I'm like, okay, a lot of this stuff kind of looked advanced to me and it looked like it was going to be React, but it wasn't. And so when I got talking to Gemini specifically, it started giving me the explanation as to what array destructuring is. So, okay, I can read that. And I have, technical knowledge, I have coding knowledge, and I was able to pick up on it in maybe 7 minutes, something like that. I didn't have a timer on me. But then, as the AI does, it asks me at the end of the conversation, it says, do you want to learn more about object destructuring? And I was like, sure. And so it gave me some object destructuring. And that was another one of the lines that I was seeing commonly. And this is when I reached out to Mike, because it's like, I'm trying to start this sort of manual journey. I don't want to keep relying on these AI bots, although I've done so kind of twofold in the previous episode and then up to now as well. And this is where I started kind of worrying and then started talking to Mike, where I was like, I kind of feel like I might be entering the gates of tutorial hell here, because I'm like, okay, maybe I need to pause my React project and go back to JavaScript. And then I'm like, you know what? Like, maybe it's just certain mechanics in JavaScript. Oh, but then every single time there's a thread to pull, such as the array destructuring, now there's object destruction. And I'm able to look at it and I'm able to read it and I can read the explanation and I understand it, right? Because I have coded, like I code to an extent for a job, right? I do a lot of content management stuff now, but I do a lot of coding still in my job, just not like super advanced coding, not, building web apps from scratch kind of thing. And this is where I had that conversation. So Mike, I don't know if you want to weigh in here, because this is where I reached out to you, where I was like, man, I feel like this is kind of like a key point or a big milestone, and I should talk about it now, because once I think I said this in the previous episode, I'll never be here again, likely, unless I completely forget everything, which is possible. But
yeah, that's fair. So I think you're right in the sense of like you're approaching tutorial hell. So this one's tough because I think everyone's a different learner. How I would approach the situation might be different than how you would approach the situation. I would accept the fact that I'm not going to know every little piece, and I would continue to build, right?
okay,
I would try to push through, and I would continue to build in the React project, because inevitably you're probably going to run into something similar. You're going to have to figure out what it is. It's going to be how I always do it, is like you're knocking down walls as you go through it. Whereas if you go back and you start being like, oh, and now I don't know JavaScript, then you're going to be putting yourself into like a more comfortable zone of learning, and you are going to make yourself stuck in tutorial hell without building. I think the fact that you're uncomfortable and that you're getting like a little bit frustrated with the fact that you don't understand some things, I think that's a good thing. I think that means that you're approaching that zone of like just knocking down walls and figuring out one after the other. Where I think you need to take the next step is to kind of accelerate that. So accept it, and then just keep knocking down those walls. So you've figured out destructuring, move on, right? Like that's it. That's enough. Like you don't need to go back and figure out the whole wheel. You'll run into something else, guaranteed, in the next time you code, and you'll figure it out again. And you have to have that confidence in yourself to be able to figure it out. And by building this React app, you're learning React. You have a foundation in JavaScript already. So I don't think you should go back, even though there are new things, because you're going to be able to figure out what is not JavaScript, what is React, by just doing what you did with the destructuring thing. Yes, it's a little bit annoying, but there's no way you're going to learn everything you need to know, and you're going to like by just going back and reading JavaScript docs. Like there's just not a chance. You're just going to forget. You need to just build and accept the fact that you're going to run into blocks and walls and stuff like that, and get that momentum going. That's what I think is lacking right now. Is like you're running into a wall. It's hurting you because you want to understand it deeply, but what you need to do is you need to figure out how to break through that wall efficiently with enough understanding to be able to hit the next wall harder and faster. And so when you get to that point where you're just building and building and building, your code's not going to be perfect. Your understanding is not going to be perfect, but it's the first React app. That's okay. The next one you build, you're going to have that foundational knowledge, and you're going to be able to build something more complex, and you're going to hit other roadblocks. I still hit roadblocks today. Right? Like I've been doing this for a long time. I've been making web apps for like near a decade now with different technologies. And I can say confidently that like on a monthly basis, I'll hit those roadblocks pretty often, and I'll just power through. Like I understand that, like, okay, I don't understand this. Like I don't understand how this system works. Like I'm working on this LLM agentic flow system right now. And I didn't understand how it works. So I had to go back and be like, okay, I don't understand. I accept that I don't understand. And then I went back to what you did when I just queried the LLM. I'm like, what does this mean? Like, what does this variable mean? What does this parameter mean in this configuration file? What does this mean? And then I started to piece it together. I started to break through the wall, and now I have a better understanding of it. But I wouldn't have been able to figure out that I don't know it if I wasn't willing to be wrong and write bad code and stuff like that. Like I'm willing to be bad at it first so that I can get to being good at it, if that makes sense.
So I've done a different approach, but HTML all the things is a nuance here. I do want to be clear to the listener out there, but I don't disagree with your approach. I want you to potentially either praise or stop me. Okay. So this is my concern is I agree with you that, we're not going to have perfect code, or I'm not going to have perfect code probably ever. Humans are imperfect. I mean, that's a reason why things crash and things. But I'm not going to have perfect code. I'm not going to have perfect understanding of everything because there's just too many pieces of technology. Even if I have perfect understanding of concept 1 today, when I get to concept 100, I'm going to forget concept 1 potentially. I get it, right? I totally understand that. The thing that I was worried about though with the destructuring is like I read it, I understand it, but it feels like I'm doing that thing again where the AI is teaching me the code. And yes, I get it. Like the listener's probably like, well, Matt, you told Gemini and AI to tell you these examples. I get that. But if I found a blog post, it'd be the exact same thing. If I found a blog post that gave me those examples, then it would be, once again, the exact same thing. And so what I've been doing is what I went to do for one day was I said, okay, because I'm only doing this part-time. Like I'm doing regular client work otherwise. And so I said, you know what, let me take a break here. Let me see if there's a place where I can sort of like just in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, do like, I don't know, a JavaScript challenge or something like that. That leads me down a rabbit hole. It starts leading me down like a rabbit hole. I'm like, okay, I don't really maybe want to do that because that's just going to be like a bunch of time doing these challenges and things. And then that's when I think I reached out to you again. I can't remember if this was one big DM or a couple, but one of the things I mentioned to you was I said, the reason why I was even looking at like sort of these like JS challenges or looking at, kind of understanding this better is because I'm reading it, but I'm never putting it into practice. And even in this one app that I'm doing right now with this like Xbox 360 Blades thing, if I like right now, to get to that first stage that the AI set out for me in the first episode there, I'm unable, how to describe this? I'm unable to practice destructuring other than one time. So it's not repetitious learning is I think the way I want to say it. It's like there's one array that's being destructured. And so my worry is if we go to this next stage with the AI, or if I just decide to take over the coding of it from here, okay, maybe whatever I do, kind of proceeding is not going to have any destructuring in it. And I'm attaching myself to this idea, but I understand it's just destructuring. It's nothing serious. But my point is that I'm not having the repetitious learning on a new concept. And there's effectively two concepts here, right? The two types of destructuring, the array and the object destructuring. And so my thought was, now drop the JavaScript challenges, like drop that idea, okay? And because we have HTML, all the things, I thought, let me write a blog post about this. This is something where I like to explain things. I usually try to be relatively, what I would call thorough. Other people, I mean, subjective. I would call it thorough in explaining basic concepts. And I thought this is basically me writing, public notes for other people, but also notes for myself, where I'm going to go in and generate the examples. I'm going to go in and do a little bit of the SEO. So I'm getting a little bit more practice with SEO, which is, always good. It's a skill that we sell. And that was my thought, was like, every time I hit a concept, maybe I should, kind of stop and then write that blog post. And I was wondering if I did that, let's say for a year or, a duration, we would have like quite a collection of, I would think good content on the site. And then if I look at this and I'm like, man, I thought I did this in the past, but I can't remember what it is. The instant I realize, oh, it's destructuring again, or, enter in another topic that I cover in the future here, assuming this happens, then I'm able to refer to effectively my own public notes, my own blog post, my own guide. I don't know if that's crazy, because I understand what you're saying. And I've heard this piece of advice, time and time again, just code, just code, just code. But is this a good way to potentially do that? Because I am coding, like I'm making the examples, I'm asking the questions, I'm figuring out, what's going on. I'm writing the explanations the way that I would see them. And There was even one where I wrote an example and was like, hang on, I actually don't know how this works. And then I went and like fixed it. And then I wrote that because I have a draft of this first blog post about half done, maybe a third, but about, partially completed. Like, is that crazy? Like, is this because there is no deadline on this Xbox 360 Blades thing, but I would like to just sort of like start advancing my coding knowledge more now. Like, I think I've figured out the SEO knowledge. I've sort of figured out the customer relations, which I do a lot. I know how to use a lot of these tools, and I know how to augment the tools, Webflow and WordPress, right? But specifically with WordPress a lot, I would like to be able to augment it even further. And even Webflow to an extent, I'd like to augment it even further. Now, I know that there's going to be criticism there from people listening to be like, why do you want to limit yourself? It's not that I'm trying to limit myself. It's just that that's where our money comes from right now. This is what people are asking us to do. We're making these sites for people. And so sometimes they'll ask for a feature that's just a little bit out of the wheelhouse. And I don't want to have to reach for a plugin that's $20 a month when it's something that I could make for them in, an hour or two. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from, and I think that makes sense. The balancing act that's going to be very difficult is for you to, like, again, continue the momentum, build something of interest, and still learn the code. Because I feel like I don't know, this one's tough because I do really see the value in writing these blog posts about every little hit, like every roadblock you hit, you write a blog post. I kind of see that value. My worry is that if it happens where like you hit a wall and then you take a month to write a blog post, then that momentum will be gone.
That's a very good point, actually.
Yeah. So like what we would need to do in that case is like, or not you would need to do is figure out.
Just do it for me, bro.
A cadence, yeah, a cadence of how you can provide that value of those blog posts. Because again, I do really see the value there, because for everyone listening, like someone out there is going through same process that you're going through, a step behind. And if you're able to document your journey, then you're helping the person that's a step behind you. Even if there is like, 100 different blogs on destructuring right now, and that is going through it now is going to have a lot more context into how to learn it, or different context, I should say, than someone that has went through it like 6 months ago or a year ago or 10 years ago. So like a senior developer writing a blog on destructuring is going to be very different than someone that's just learning destructuring now.
Which is why I was like a little worried about leaving it. Because I was like,
I understand, yeah.
Because there's some, like, for example, there's like in the draft, so it may not make it into the final thing. I have an example, like a code snippet. And then I had that problem and I had to make those additional notes. And when I made those additional notes, I was like, this is like super beginner stuff, because I'm learning the beginnings of it. And so this is something that, if you asked me something this granular about, declaring a variable, I wouldn't really be able to give that to you anymore.
So the reality I want to put to you is like, I think you need to internally figure this out in terms of like when you're feeling yourself be productive, right? Like when you feel like, oh, I just want to keep building, you have to follow that inner voice. But when you find yourself with the inner voice of like, oh, I really want to document this, I really want to learn it deeply, maybe that's, it seems like that's what destructuring called out in you. And that's a good spot to like trust your inner voice and put something on paper. So just try to be in touch with that, because again, the most important thing in my eyes when learning something is momentum. And like, we can't trust motivation. We can't trust anything. You have to be able to sit down and like learn. Right.
Right.
And it's very difficult. Like I struggle with that kind of stuff a lot. And that's why I have this, worried view on it, where like, if you don't prioritize the momentum, you're just going to be dead in the water. And like a month or two from now, we're going to forget about this, and it wouldn't have gone anywhere. So again, I see both coins. I see both sides to what you're saying. And there's a lot of value to what you're saying as well. And in our case, in this specific case, because this isn't a critical skill that you need for your job right now, it might make sense to do it slowly and, document your journey as much as possible. That's probably better for HTML, the things, right? And that's really the major goal. But what I want to point out to everyone listening, especially, is you really need to trust yourself on this, where like, if you're finding it a slog to write these blog posts every time you hit a roadblock, and you just want to get through the roadblock and move on, that's okay.
Then just push through.
Push through. Like if you're more inclined to do that than write a blog post, push on. Because again, it's more important for you to sit down the next day and write a little bit of code, be stuck on a blog post for a couple weeks.
It's one of those things where the goal, if you think about it, the goal is to complete the React project, the Blades dashboard. It is not to write the blog post. Now for us, there's nuance there because we also have we also kind of have like a site to feed, if you will. We have a website to feed. We have, people to like help. We like help teach people, through this podcast and through other means. And so we have a little bit of a different, look at it and a little bit of a different take. But I totally get where you're coming from, Mike, because it makes a lot of sense to trust yourself in that way. Like, I'm just trying to think of, actually, so like this would be a thing. So for example, I didn't stop at, like, I set up a little environment for myself, right? Got the repo, got all this. I didn't like stop and go, okay, let's write about, the repo, even though I know how to do that already. And I've been doing that for a long time. It's like, I could have wrote a blog post about that. I could have wrote a blog post about like Vite even, right? Because it was like, create React apps kind of like, basically defunct. Like you should be using this Vite thing. And it's kind of like, okay, what is that? And I even asked the bot some questions about that and it explained the situation. And that could have been something that I got caught up on and been like, okay, like what is this Vite thing? But I decided not to. So maybe it's a bit of an ebb and flow here where I feel as though, because I think the thing that struck me with destructuring, like it's very simple. Like, I mean, people are probably listening that are, senior devs or something going like, why are you so stuck on destructuring? I'm not stuck on destructuring. I understand what it does, but I was doing it sort of the old way, the old destructuring, if you will, where it was sort of like, I would go in and like have a variable and like use the index of the array. Like I'd be like, I need like the second value. So give me the index, give me the value of like, number 1, right? Because it starts at 0. And that's how I was doing it. And that's how I would have done it in my React app. And then when I kept seeing, these destructuring things in all these examples, and then in my own React project, like I said, from the last episode, then it's like, okay, I should probably learn this. So this is interesting. Like, this is an interesting, I don't want to use the word distraction, but I feel like I might have to use the word distraction. This is like an interesting distraction when it comes to tutorial hell, because you can see so easily, and I think this is the first time I've seen it like so clearly. I've seen it a few times. I'm sure you've seen tutorial hell a few times, Mike, where you just sort of keep diving in, keep digging. But this is like a precipice for me. This is like peak tutorial hell for me, where I was, so close to just being like, okay, give me some JavaScript challenges. Let's do a JavaScript course. And it's like, okay, so now what am I going to do? Do a JavaScript course for 6 months? Do a JavaScript course for 6 weeks? Whatever the length of it is. Am I going to do challenges every day? And that's going to be, my excuse for not building anything. Now I do have another question though, Mike, to like build off of this. So like the 360 Blades like program, if you will, is far from like what I think a lot of people would do as a first project. So another thing that crossed my mind throughout all this is like, and this crosses my mind all the time, which is why I want to ask you about this, is every single time I go to start a project and I get stuck, I'm like, man, should I stop this and go start another project where they're all test projects, so there's no deadline on them. But should I start another project that's like more for practice, and so I can get that repetitious learning? Because, and maybe you can even touch on that, because like I'm so caught up in this sort of like repetitious learning, but because there's so many concepts, it's like I'm worried that I'll build a whole project out, only do like, destructuring, or only do, another topic that maybe I get stuck on once or twice, and then I'll forget it. Because in CSS for the longest time, I would just copy paste media queries, because I would use them, once back in the day when responsive design was new. I would use them maybe once in my style sheet, and then that would be it, right? And then I would just go into the media and into the media's block, and I would just do my, my selecting and changing my widths and things, and my responsive design at different breakpoints. And I had to literally sit down and be like, I'm going to friggin' learn how to write a media, a media block. Like I'm going to learn how to write this media, an at media tag, if you will, because I need to learn how to write this whole thing. I can't just keep copying and pasting it, but I did that like professionally for so long. Like,
So So this is where I'll say something controversial. I think that's a waste of time, personally. I think that you will inevitably learn things that you need to learn by the repetition that's required of them. And the things that are one-offs that you can copy and paste, you should not cognitively load your brain up with them. That is, I stand by that pretty strongly, honestly. Our brain can only maintain so much stuff in it. There's so much to know in programming. There's like so much to know that if you get stuck on these little things where you're like, I need to know how this works, or I need to understand how this works, when you're using it once in a while, it's not worthwhile to do that if you can just copy paste it. I just don't see the value in it. Like, unless you're preparing for a test or something, or you're preparing for, an interview that's specifically targeting media queries or something like that. Like, like there's certain instances where that does make sense. But in day-to-day work, or in day-to-day you're just programming a project, I don't see the value in that. Like, you're not a teacher. Like, you're not going to in front of a class every day to need to explain that. What you need to do is you need to utilize it as a tool. And tools sit in a toolbox until you need to use them. Some of them sit in your tool belt, right? Because you need to use them all the time. And therefore they're probably more in your mind, but that inevitably comes with the repetition required to write them. So like the CSS that you write, the Flexbox and stuff, you don't have to read up on that because you've already done it a million times. You can write it. The reason that you have to read up media queries, this is just an example. You probably don't have to read them up now, but like your example,
Not any longer.
yeah,
No.
not any longer. But like your example, like if you need to read up media queries, then you probably just don't need to use them often enough for you to put them in your tool belt. They could remain in the box. And so like I do really believe that you should leave things in the box intentionally and focus on the things that will inevitably be put into your tool belt by you just using them multiple times, like many times as you're using them. And they will the other thing about this is they will change based on the project that you're working on, based on the company that you're working with. Like, those things are inevitably going to go from box to belt on a consistent basis from whatever you're working on, like on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis. You're going to have different things in your belt and different things in your toolbox, right? So I think you need to accept that kind of thing and allow certain things to be just copy pasted, put them in a snippet. That's an even better thing, because that's more like intentional. That might make you feel better, whatever. Like, just do something else rather than spend time memorizing things that you use once during project setup.
It's interesting you say that, because a number, I want to say years ago at this point, I wrote a CSS grid guide, and I use CSS grid so infrequently that I just sort of pull up a cheat sheet whenever I use it. And I'm able to, like, kind of almost immediately with the cheat sheets assistance, just sort of like quickly make out, make a little section or make a little module or whatever it is that I'm making on my page. But in general, I don't know CSS grid like well enough so that if you came up to me and like, hey, I have questions about your guide, I'd be like, man, I was like, super into CSS grid back then, and now I don't really remember it that much. But Flexbox is something that I use, absolutely every single day. And so I use it because like I think personally that grid has more niche applications. It's totally a valid thing. And I've used it, maybe 100 times over the past, few years. But like, I don't even know if it's been 100 actually. When I say that, it's like, that kind of sounds like a lot. Maybe like 20, maybe. But even then, though, the point is like 20 across several years is like, sometimes like a few months go by and then I don't use it. I just don't use I don't use it for the next month. And then it's like, I don't use that knowledge. So why store it? And we had a teacher, I don't know if you remember Laswick, we had a teacher that told us that in college, where he said, I wrote these, what they're called core files. They're kind of like drivers. And he was like, I wrote these driver files. And he's like, once I have my driver built, I threw all that knowledge away because I'm going to use my driver to like continue coding in this other thing. And like, I don't need to redo my driver all the time.
He's the one that really like fundamentally changed the way I think about programming. And I've followed his advice pretty much every step of the way. That's what has resonated with me the most. Like, his programming class was our most difficult programming class, but it was also by far the most valuable programming class.
Most valuable, yeah.
We were definitely actually programming. We weren't just copy pasting. We were learning concepts, and he taught us real like things, like you just said, that concept of, hey, just throw it out. You don't need it. If you don't need it right now, you don't need it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. So like that, I've I've heavily relied on that, and it's now a very critical part of my coding strategy where I don't even think about it. Like I know that certain things I'll have in my head and certain things I won't, and that's fine. And with AI, I want to like kind of to wrap up another part of what I wanted to talk about is AI changes this a little bit more because once you understand the concept of like how, I saw a good example someone said. You code you create a modal a couple of times, right? Like from HTML, put a little JavaScript, CSS. You've done it a couple times. That's enough for you to be able to then prompt AI to be able to do it for you, in my opinion. In this person's opinion that was saying it. And I kind of agree with that. Where like if you've done nav bars a bunch of times, Matt, I think that's fully acceptable for like if you were learning in the learning concept, like you should never have to write a custom navbar again, in my opinion. You should always start with AI to do it because you know what's going on with a navbar. You don't need to worry about the intricacies and the little details and the code. You can just prompt what you want from the AI. It'll create a navbar and then you could prompt it more to edit it. So if you've created an app a few times, 2, 3, 4 times, and you've done all these little things custom with some AI help, not like actual coding, that's enough for you to kind of take that next step and be like, okay, I think I have enough knowledge now to just let AI write this for me because there's no point in me doing it. I can already query it. I can already debug it. I can already ask AI certain things because I've done it before. So I do think that there's some value there as well. Like once you understand that, because as you're going through and creating this app, certain things in it, I think you should just let AI write for you. Like some of the HTML and CSS, you don't need to worry about that too much, in my opinion. Like, that shit. Like, yeah, it's a little bit custom for the blades, but like, who cares? Like, you could figure it out. It's not like you couldn't figure it out if you needed to.
Right.
You could figure it out. But the
I have
JavaScript,
underlying understanding.
yeah, the JavaScript, yeah, like you need to understand that a little bit deeper. So yeah, you're going on the JavaScript journey right now. You have to write it a little bit yourself. That's fine. But once you start getting the hang of it, there's nothing wrong with you then starting to query AI as well, as you start to feel a little bit more confident in it, right? So I think there's this line that you'll see yourself understand where you're like, okay, I know how to do this. I'm not going to do it, right? And that's when you can just be like, okay, AI, just write this for me. So I think you can accelerate your project at least in a certain sense because of that. And you can just focus on the things that you need to focus on in the project to learn. And therefore, it'll be much faster for you. So like just a suggestion. You don't have to follow that suggestion, obviously, but I feel like
For sure.
there's some value there where you're learning how to prompt as well. So that's another kind of skill that you're learning. You're learning how to edit the prompts and like create like follow-up prompt. So it could benefit you from that perspective as well. Because that reality is, we've talked about this before, like that's where we're headed. So learning that a little bit better is not going to hurt during this project experience as well.
It's an interesting insight because I mean, I can already see myself getting like so bogged down and like so like, oh my God, like is this Blades project going to literally take, 6 months, 9 months? Is it going to take a whole year? Is it never going to get done and it'll just sort of be like a thing that I use to like constantly learn a couple of new things? But you're 100% right in that, like, for example, like if I did not forget this, but if I took a course on Scrimba for CSS variables a number of years ago now, I think maybe a year or two ago, and whatever, I took that course and I used CSS variables, like whatever. But if I forgot how to use CSS variables, I wouldn't go and take that whole course again. I know that I would just kind of have to knock the rust off and look up, oh, CSS variables, give me a rundown, whether that be a blog post or an AI prompt. And then I'd be like, okay, I can use this again. I wouldn't go back and try to like learn it from scratch. It's not like I'm going to have that perfect knowledge. And I mean, you were saying, if you don't need it, you don't need it. The first thing that came to mind was like a game developer, where how many things did they learn, on a given console that they were working with, the Xbox 360 or the NES or whatever, some little hack to make their game run better. Well, that hack was only going to be applicable on the NES, on the 360, on the, PlayStation, whatever it was they're working on. And then the times moved on. I mean, people don't generally release, I'm sure there's someone out there doing it, but the people don't generally release, PlayStation 1 titles any longer. People don't do that. And so those, that knowledge doesn't need to be at the forefront of your brain, but also you learning or them learning that hack, like that PlayStation performance hack, taught them to look up how to do hacks like that. And so then now they can take that knowledge and extrapolate it, and they can go, okay, I'm on, years have gone by and I'm on the Xbox 360 now. Is there any performance hacks? Right? Assuming the PlayStation 1 was their first one. And so, yeah, this is making a lot of sense. Like, because I think one of the other things I was thinking was, this project has no deadline. This project has no, monetary value up front. I'm not selling this thing. I'm just kind of messing around, And so I thought, well, let's just use it to mess around. But then at the same time, it'd be like, yeah, but you should, it'd be nice to complete it. It'd be nice to, there's a reason why I came up with the idea. It's not like my idea was to make a cheat sheet. If it was to make a cheat sheet app, then yeah, then I have to get into the nuance of this stuff because I'm making this stuff. That's the point of this. And I mean, maybe there's an idea there, but this is super interesting. I think that this is something that a lot of people will struggle with. And like I said it earlier, I've never been so close to tutorial hell as this. And I almost stepped in it. Like, I feel like I still got a toe in there a little bit. I'm still gonna, I plan on still completing that one blog post on the destructuring. But see, I even kind of bit my, I kind of like shot myself in the foot a little bit because I did array destructuring. That's my blog post. And then I thought, oh, I should have 2 blog posts. I should have array destructuring and then object destructuring. And it starts, it starts becoming silly. It starts getting silly because there's a new section of the site that I want to do for like, not quite a glossary, but kind of a glossary. And I was like, man, these would be great for the glossary. And now I've gone down the rabbit hole of like all these things. Now, I will say again, we have that nuance that we do have HTML, all the things to feed. Maybe that's great for HTML, all the things. And I'm still benefiting something that, makes us revenue and, whatever. However, for people out there listening, if you don't have that, if you don't have like one of your revenue sources, one of your projects is your blog, let's say, and your blog is just sort of an aside or it's almost like a piece of your portfolio, and your primary goal is actually to push forward to the end of like that. Like, let's say you're doing the 360 blades. That's your portfolio project. Then you move on to the next thing. You're making a fancy calculator or whatever the heck it is you're making. And that's your next portfolio project. Like, if your goal is the portfolio projects, your goal is the portfolio projects. For us, there's a bit of nuance there. But I do think that I'm beating around the bush of like, I really should just like upgrade my knowledge to the point where I'm able to make a full, I think the goal would be eventually to make a full modern, like full stack app, like just a web app of some sort. And it doesn't have to go out to the public or anything because like none of our clients have asked for that. And there's tons of work right now. But the point is that
I think that's a good goal.
Yeah, like it's just, I feel like that's, maybe I need to look at that as more of an end goal, and it'll be slower than other people because I still should write some blog posts and things.
Yeah.
However, yeah, we are where we kind of are, or I am where I kind of am.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I kind of thought this episode was going to be about 40 minutes, and it's at like 41:54. I mean, I'm sure that through editing and stuff it'll get shorter. So it's a bit of a shorter episode, but it's something that I definitely needed to have a conversation on, because I can see how we've had quite a few people reach out to us on Discord or whatever over the years, and they're just like stuck in tutorial hell. And you try to pull them out and they're like, oh, I could do this, but I could write this other guide, or I could try this, or maybe I can get into this little subfield where I can get into robotics now, or I can get into Raspberry Pis, or I can get into microcontrollers. And it's like, well, yeah, you could, but like, like how are you going to let the microcontroller companies that you want to work with apparently today, but then tomorrow you want to work for a robotics company, but how are you going to let them know that you have any skills if you've done 4 tutorials, 3 half blog posts that have never published, and then you're, constantly watching YouTube videos and haven't completed anything. Mm-hmm. And you can see how much of sort of a quicksand tutorial hell can be. I'm barely touching React.
Exactly.
I've tickled the surface of React, and then yeah. So yeah, that's this episode. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Mike, but I think I just needed to have this conversation. It's given me some insights. It is the day before Christmas Eve, so I will enact none of the stuff that we discussed for the next few days at least, but I will continue, shortly after Boxing Day and that. And I mean, do you have anything else to add, Mike?
No, I think that's it. I think we covered it. I think there's a lot of good, valuable information in here. Hopefully you can get something out of it and get you out of tutorial hell. Not only you, Matt, but like everyone else that's listening to this, more importantly. Yeah. I think that this is a really tough topic right now, especially with everything that's going on. But yeah, we need to just find a way to learn, and everyone's going to be different. So find your way that maybe is a little bit different than what we're doing.
You know what? I think that's a good place to end is like, you don't need to do exactly what we're doing. Like if you need to take notes on everything, but your goal is like that end goal, maybe find a way to quickly make notes. Like you mentioned timing, Mike, for the blog post. Like obviously blog posts are more in-depth than quick notes. But at the end of the day, if you're a person that needs to take quick notes, I mean, maybe try to learn how to take quick notes, how to make little cheat sheets for yourself that, maybe take an hour total, but you can move on. And then if you have that sort of like what I call it paranoia on myself, like for myself, it's like I have that paranoia of like, oh my God, I forget how to do this. You might be able to just, flip back 2 pages in your notebook and just be like, yep, okay, yep, okay. It's like, a couple paragraphs, some cheat sheets. Okay, moving on. You get right back to it. I think the momentum is a great way to sort of discuss this. Like Mike said, is anything to keep that momentum up within reason, of course. But yeah, if you have a specific way to learn, if you have tips for me, if you think I'm a fool, I mean, you can call me a fool as well. We had someone call us a fool on YouTube, so I mean that's fine. If I'm a fool, I'm a fool. I'll open up the Fool and Flagon. Isn't that a bar, local bar or something? I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what I tried to go somewhere with that and it just didn't work. And a random shout out to a random bar that I hope is a cool place. I've never been there. Anyway, moving on with our lives. If you'd like to support episodes like this, you can do so on Patreon. That's patreon.com/HTML, all the things. Check out the tiers and give that a go. Many thanks to our $3 tier patrons, Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And remember that we're not on Scrimba, but we have a Scrimba discount. You can get up to 20% off a Scrimba Pro plan if you use our link. That's scrimba.com/links/HTML all the things. Link will also be in the show notes and in the episode description with full details about that link in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. And remember that we are powered by CodeRabbit. They give you the power of AI code reviews to help cut your code review time in half. Check out the link in the show notes and episode description to net yourself a 14-day free trial with no credit card needed and just a 2-click sign up with a GitHub or GitLab account. And last but not least, we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on htmlallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or review the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.